for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it.
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Democratic 2020 contender Kamala Harris fully embracing single-payer health care insurance or health insurance at a town hall, saying she's willing to eliminate private insurance as we know it to make it happen. In 2017, Senator Harris became the first Senate Democrat to support Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. The program, if implemented, would carry a very hefty price tag for the American taxpayer, all of you out there. A study released over the summer by George Mason University estimated the program would cost more than $3 trillion per year. That's about 3/4 of this year's entire proposed federal budget. Do the math. Sanders and his supporters claim the short-term costs would eventually be offset by a more efficient system. Where have we heard that before? House Democratic Caucus Chair kind of talking around it when asked if he supports Harris's proposal.
I think it's too early to comment, one, on proposals being floated by any presidential candidate. Certainly, Senator Harris is someone I have great respect for, and she's had a phenomenal rollout over the last week. Democrats are united behind the principle that we should lower health care costs for the American people, protect people with pre-existing conditions, and begin that conversation with a focus on lowering the high cost of life-saving prescription drugs.
Capri, I mean, I wish what she was saying were true. Right. I wish we could just blow off the process of approving things through insurance. I can't believe we're going through this again. I mean, let's start with the cost. When she talks about what she's talking about would cost $3 trillion. When Obamacare came out and the president said it's going to go down by $1,250 per year per family, I said that is not true. He either can't do math or he's not telling the truth. I was attacked for that at the time, and guess what? Premiums did not go down. The math did not work. $3 trillion a year, if you confiscate the wealth of every billionaire in this country and you throw them in jail, if you tax everyone completely, you can't come up with $3 trillion. Our voters, I mean, isn't it cruel to dangle
give them a false
this in front of people as if it's possible?
Look, this wouldn't be the first, nor will it be the last time that, politicians or those trying to be elected put something out there that is sounds great on paper, sounds great in a 30-second ad, but isn't necessarily possible or plausible when it comes to implementation. Look, I've spent the better part of my adult life in health policy. I'm a licensed social worker. I trained in the hospital systems. I've trained in free clinics, and I authored the prior authorization reform law for health care in the state of Ohio. So I think we would all agree that, people shouldn't have to go through the red tape and that everybody should have access to health care services. But this is la la land, because we would have to dismantle a system that, where the private sector is pervasive, not just in employer-based health insurance, but in Medicaid, where we have managed care now in most states, and in Medicare, where Medicare Advantage also exists, which is a managed care system. So we cannot just blow this system up. But even and it's already insolvent.
It wouldn't work. I mean, even if you blew up the system and you took away insurance companies, you still can't give every human being every health care possible, every treatment possible right when they need it, unless the doctors are going to work for free, or the hospitals are going to give away stuff for free, or somebody's going to be doing it for free.
Would you want it for free? Then there's no doctors.
The government will ration care. There will be longer wait times. We have seen this in Canada. We've seen this in the UK.
It's not really free.
The evidence is in. Well, and on that point,
because
you ran through the math.
Time is everything. We
spent $4 trillion. The federal government spent $4 trillion last year in 2018. We ran an $800 billion deficit almost. So we're already in trouble paying for what we're already spending You add 75 or 80% to that budget, the only way you can come close to paying for that is by taxing not just the rich, not just millionaires and billionaires, massive, I am not exaggerating, huge tax increases on working people, on middle-class Americans.
Everyone.
And what do they get in exchange for that? More than 150 million people get their current health care plan and situation uprooted completely. They have what they have right now. Remember, if you like it, you can keep it. And 5 million
won't be able to keep it.
150 million people would lose their current situation and go to a government-run plan. The idea that the government is going to have some sort of efficient, red tape-free scenario.
I want to ask Katie a question, though, about
the VA.
Where we just were in terms of the fairness to the American people, hardworking American people, who may not have the time to sit down and crunch the numbers, but what they do is they hear the rhetoric over, well, could it be for me and everybody on the planet? And we know that it can't be, even our little planet of America.
Well, and healthcare is a big topic. It comes in as #1 in polling for what people are concerned about. And it's not necessarily because they want a single-payer system. It's because their premiums have increased. And one of the most dishonest things that people like Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders say about this is that everybody has a right to access to health care. But access to health insurance, especially government-run, single payer is a nice way of saying government-run health care or bureaucratic health care. Having health insurance, and Obamacare has proved this, does not give you access to any kind of medical care. Correct. And you talked about the rationing. Doctors have been retiring early. I know 3 people personally who have decided not to go to medical school because of Obamacare. You can magnify that significantly when it comes to the government deciding to take over healthcare. And to the bureaucracy thing, yeah, there are problems in the healthcare system now, absolutely. But if you think it's going to get better by the government taking it over, and you think there's going to be no red tape and paperwork, as Kamala Harris was talking about, got a boat to sell you, bridge to sell you. I mean, it's ridiculous.
All right. Well, meanwhile, former Vice President Joe Biden is making his presence felt in the liberal bastion of Broward County, Florida. During an event last night billed as an evening with Vice President Joe Biden, he told a Fort Lauderdale audience he's closing in on deciding on a 2020 presidential run, but is taking a methodical approach, saying, quote, "The answer is that I'm running the traps on this. I don't want to make this a fool's errand. I'm a lot closer than I was before Christmas and will make the decision soon," end quote. A new Washington Post/ABC News poll shows Biden and Senator Kamala Harris neck and neck among Democratic voters, but still in single digits, with Biden holding a slight lead. And when voters are asked whom they would choose if the Democratic primaries were held today, 43% say they're undecided, with no name, by the way, I'm just going to add to the copy here a little bit, popping out of those single digits. Some of these people have almost supreme recognizability, like a lot Joe Biden has coupled, or rather recognized, but coupled with a little likability or more. How does that play a role in all of this?
I think, Biden and the team around him, they understand because he was the vice president of the United States for 8 years, many Americans know who he is. So when you give people an offering of a bunch of names, they might say, oh, I know that guy, and sort of say, it's years away. Let's say him in a poll. Jeb Bush was clearly going to be the Republican nominee in the early polls at this point in the last cycle.
High name recognition.
Exactly. You can just sort of throw these numbers out in terms of where we're going to end up as a pure predictor. But Biden has a lot going for him, I think, this time, because the argument he's going to make, and I talked to a Democrat yesterday who thinks he's going to announce in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and he thinks he's leaning towards yes, running. The case he can make to voters, Democratic voters, desperate to win this election and beat President Trump is, I can hold together the people who voted for Hillary, and I can peel off a few of the people who voted for Trump. Some of the Democrats on this field or in this field
can't get Bernie people.
Well, I mean,
Hillary, that was a growing.
Hillary got a number of the Bernie people, but she, won the popular vote.
But the Bernie lane is split amongst 1 million people.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so Joe Biden
is
going to be, sort of singularly on his own in this lane, unless someone like a Sherrod Brown runs from Ohio, who's younger than Joe Biden and offers the same kind of thing.
All right, let's take a look at this polling now from ABC. Donald Trump wins the Republican nomination. 28% would definitely vote for the current president. 14% would consider it. 56% won't vote for Trump. What do you make of it?
56% of Republicans in that poll?
Yeah.
It's a whole poll. Got it. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. I just don't see any way that Trump doesn't get his same people back together and everyone who voted the last time around.
And is that enough?
No matter what. and it does end up being enough like it was last time. It just feels like we're going in that direction. And I know we're too far out to know at this point in time, but it's that problem on the left of splitting off the folks in all different directions. And then if you feel like you're not represented, you're disaffected and you don't go to the poll.
Well, and it
So
depends
what
on
do you
who
do
it
with
is,
the
right?
argument that Democrats always come together in the end? The difference here, though, is that President Trump isn't really necessarily going to run against any one of them. He's going to run with what he has now.
He's going to run on his record. And while Democrats, so far as we've seen, like Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, are running on identity politics, he's going to say, look, you can call everyone deplorable, so to speak, and racist, and say that this country is falling apart at the seams when it comes to our social fabric. But the truth is that you're talking about things. I've been getting things done for real people, real Hispanic unemployment, real Black unemployment, and doing things that people can actually see. So if you want to talk about it all day long, here are our results.
All right, we'll move on. Anti-Trump hecklers targeting Starbucks founder Howard Schultz. You start talking about splitting that vote a little bit. He wants to run as an independent. He's floating that for a presidential run in 2020. Democrats are warning it would harm their chances of retaking the White House. We'll talk more about that coming up. And bipartisan talks set to begin tomorrow on border security. Can lawmakers reach a deal that includes a wall? And will Senate Republicans still support the president if there's another shutdown? Stay with us.
You have to give and take. I've told the president that. I've told to Senator McConnell. He understands that. Now, the question is, will we, by the 15th, be able to bridge those differences? I hope so. I worked for a year to try to avoid where we are today.
Amid a temporary truce in the partial government shutdown, a panel of Senate and House lawmakers from both parties set to meet tomorrow to begin negotiations on border security, including President Trump's call for more than $5 billion in border wall funding. The talks come ahead of a February 15th deadline that would trigger another shutdown. The panel, consisting of 9 Democrats and 8 Republicans, the White House yesterday saying that President Trump is hopeful for a deal and does not want another shutdown.
As the president's indicated on a number of occasions, they could get this done in 15 minutes. We agree on the fundamentals that border security is important. We agree on the fact that there is a problem and we should do something about it. So let's spend some time over the next 3 weeks. Let's get it done. The president's opened the government on the basis that Democrats have signaled to us that they're willing to actually get serious about a real deal and get serious about fixing the problem at the border, including funding for a border wall.
But Republican Senator John Kennedy says any deal must prioritize border security. Watch this.
It depends on what the compromise is. If it's very little wall and almost all amnesty, I'm not going to support it. There may be a time, maybe at some point in the future, to talk about substantial amnesty, but we've had 6 amnesties since 1986. And every time they tell us, if you'll just do one more, we'll secure the border. There's been a 30-year bipartisan refusal by both big government Republicans and Ritz-Carlton Democrats to refuse to secure the border.
Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, a panel member, says a deal may be possible as the debate drags on. Watch.
Well, I think there's a growing sentiment on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. We've got to get beyond this mess. We have so many other things to do, including a new round of appropriations for next year after we finish what we were supposed to do for this year. And many of us are chomping at the bit to go get to work. That's why we're sent here. And to be caught up in this problem, 35-day government shutdown over the president's campaign promise, I think people are losing their patience on both sides of the aisle.
In the meantime, Politico reports that Senate Republicans are signaling no appetite for another shutdown, with some even considering veto-proof legislation. Katie, I'm afraid to get hopeful. I have heard so many people in the past 24 hours today say that if you look at the panel and you look at the names of the people that have gotten together, that it feels like it might be a group that can do some horse trading and get something done. I could cry with happiness, but I feel like those chairs might be wasted.
The gang of 17, right? 9 plus 8, 17.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see. I mean, the people running the show here are not necessarily in the Senate. The person running the show has been Nancy Pelosi. And so we have to look at the House and see if those Democratic members who were sent there, not on the far left as those who have gotten the most attention this cycle, but those in districts that are swing districts. There's new polling out showing that actually these moderate Democrats, these blue dog Democrats that are freshmen, and we've heard a lot about this during the shutdown, their constituents have been pressuring them to get some kind of deal. So if it comes together with something in the Senate, they can negotiate it in the House. But Nancy Pelosi is the one who's going to have to make a decision about whether she's going to continue to say, I'm not interested in any kind of wall or barrier, despite both Republicans, Democrats in the House and the Senate voting for this type of security in the past. I am not hopeful that it's not going to get bogged down into bigger conversations about amnesty when you have to turn off the spigot of flow. I mean, you look at the numbers here. We are paying $5 billion for beds to house people who are coming here. There's $4.5 billion in the new proposal that the White House put out for an additional 52,000 beds for people who haven't even come here yet. That's just on anticipation. You cannot continue to have this problem without actually solving it, because it's never going to end.
Can I be an optimist?
Okay.
I'll be an optimist just really quickly on this.
Yeah.
Because I think that the fact that they do have a conference committee is a stark contrast to what we've seen, previously. There's no question that I think that both Americans and Congress do not have an appetite for a continued shutdown.
No doubt.
And so what I think is, and I've seen this happen in other legislative proceedings, when you have something like a conference committee and they're also bringing in experts, from Border Patrol, from law enforcement, et cetera, it's an opportunity to basically say, you can hide behind the decisions of the conference committee to say, say, we saw what the experts wanted. We're going to do what the experts wanted. Take the politics out of it.
They've kind of already done that, though.
Let's hope that that's the case.
Right in there.
But now it's
so
like
I'm going through the list of 9 Democrats and 8 Republicans right now, and I just caught this on the House side. The conferees, the Democrats, all actually have a barrier in their state because they're all from California. Lucille Ribble Allard, David Price, Barbara Lee, Henry Cuellar. Well, he's of Texas, but Pete Aguilar of California. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 5 of the Democrats on the House side. I just find that fascinating. They already have a structure. And then Kevin McCarthy is saying, House Minority Leader has said this morning, if Democrats are beginning to discuss barriers, that's a positive, all shapes and forms. Right back to that positivism that you said that you were saying.
Look, I think the base politics on both sides incentivize not a deal. So I'll be the pessimist on the couch, but I'll say this. The number 3 Democrat in the House is James Clyburn. Clyburn said a few days ago, what if we gave Trump $5.7 billion, the whole amount, but for a smart wall? Then the number 2 Democrat in the House, Steny Hoyer, said, I think new physical barriers are part of the solution. Take the 5.7, appropriate that money, use half of it for new barriers. All the Democrats have been all over television
whatever the experts tell you.
They're in favor of barriers, deploy them in strategic areas, and call it a day. And you might say, well, what do the Democrats get out of that? They get border security. They keep telling us they are for border security. That should be the means to the end unto itself. We get border security, give them the money, and have some of it for barriers. This shouldn't be hard.
Guy Benson,
but it will be.
What office are you running for?
Nothing, believe me. I would lose every election I ever tried.
To get them there on that one. All right, Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker speaking about the Mueller probe, saying it's close to completion. His comments getting backlash from some Democrats. So what was Whitaker right to make those remarks? And when will the Mueller investigation end? We're going to debate that next.
I hope that we can get the report from Director Mueller as soon as possible.